Welcome to the MYS Virtual Hangout. Here's your host, MYS Music Director, Raul Gomez.
Welcome. How is it going? We have a very exciting show for you today. This is our best of MYS Virtual Hangouts so far. We have had so many amazing guests, and I want to get right to it. Okay, we're gonna go mostly in order of appearance for our guests, and I want to start with Sarah Tiedemann. Sarah Tiedemann is the artistic director of Third Angle. By the way, shout out to Third Angle. I'm wearing my Third Angle t-shirt, which I love. And Sarah was her first guest, and we were still trying to figure out the tech part of this. The Skype video didn't work, but we had audio only. But Sarah gave us one of my absolute favorites, Say What segment. So where guests share something surprising or unexpected. And what she shared with us was just, I mean, you're about to see it. So enjoy Sarah Tiedemann's Say What. Cool. So our next little segment is Say What? And that's where you share something surprising about yourself that our viewers might not know or expect.
So I kind of I alluded to this earlier. So in my mid-20s, I was going to school in Sweden, and I came home for a break in between my 2 years of my program, and I was preparing for this big competition in Paris, and I was just like stressed out and burned out, and I said, forget it. Put my flute in the case, and it almost never came out for like a year and a half.
Whoa, wow,
yeah.
Okay. Say what?
Say what? I took a break, and I thought, well, what do I want to do? So I thought, this is 20-something Sarah. So 25-year-old Sarah thought, I'll be an actress. And I showed up at this audition for this independent film, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I thought, well, I see an X on the floor, so I'll go stand on it. I did my lines, and then they said, okay, well, this character sings. Can you sing? And I was like, not right now. They said, okay, we're going to have a callback, and you come sing. So I tried to learn to sing really fast, and I belted something out, and for whatever reason, they cast me. So on the weekends, I was acting in this independent film, which never got finished. It got filmed.
Oh, so we can't watch? We can't.
The footage is still in the world.
Wow.
I have the rough cut.
Oh, you do?
We'll see. It's a little socially not relevant now, but so I did that on the weekends, and then I worked at a coffee shop as a barista, so I know the difference between a latte and a cappuccino, which many people do not.
Yeah.
By what they order. And then I thought, well, they tried to promote me to assistant manager, and then I freaked out and was like, what am I doing? And then I thought, well, I'll just get another job. So I worked at the financial firm across the street for a while in the mailroom, wearing a suit and pushing a mail cart with a squeaky wheel around this office. And I was like, well, this is not what I want to do with my life either. Because at that time I was like, well, then I'll be a naturopath.
Oh my God.
I went to PCC for a term because I hadn't done any pre-med stuff. Then I thought, well, I don't want to do this. So then I had a friend who taught at a charter school, and their music teacher had just quit. So I thought, well, I'll go teach elementary school music, and I did that for a year. And in the middle of that, my 8th grade science teacher and I are buddies, and he said, we went out for a beer, and he said, I want to run for Congress. And I was like, cool, I'll manage your campaign. And then we just drank a beer, and then we didn't try very hard in the primary, but somehow he won. And
Who are you?
So then I ran this like national congressional campaign, which we didn't win. He was trying to beat an incumbent, and that didn't work out. But that was exciting. I was having like weird meetings with party chairs in the back room at an Elmer's pancake house, and like being in the North Plains Elephant Garlic Parade, whatever. So then in the middle of that, I had a friend who was teaching at Willamette University, and she left the flute job there and said, oh, there's going to be an opening because I'm quitting. And so I auditioned for that job and got that. So for a while I was running a national congressional campaign and like answering phone calls from the Today Show in between students at Willamette. And then that ended, and that was kind of, Willamette was my gateway drug back to the flute, and I've been doing that ever since. So that was all in 2.5 years. I did all that 3 years.
That is extraordinary. And also, do you realize how high you have set the bar for the Say What section of the show for future guests?
Say What peaked early.
Wow. I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Awesome. I love it. Okay. So, okay. Okay, that was Sarah Tiedemann's Say What, and that was our very first show. And yes, Say What peaked early. Now, next, our next guest was Kenji Bunch, violist, composer, and his live performance was definitely one of my favorite moments. So we're going to listen to that first, but before I cue that up, I just want to make sure that everything is in place and we will not have the same echo problem we had before. It looks like we're all set. Okay, so here's Kenji Bunch performing his piece for solo viola Étouffée. and the crowd goes wild. So that still blows my mind. Okay, so that's Kenji Banch performing his own piece, Étouffée, for our second ever Hangout a few weeks ago. Now, our next guest was no stranger to Metropolitan Youth Symphony families and musicians. It was no other than our very own Chris Whittemore, our artistic operations manager. And Chris shared a segment with us called Sound Advice, and I would love to share about the second half of that segment where he shares really extraordinary advice for young musicians and for all of us. So here's Chris Whittemore with Sound Advice.
My dad has been a huge influence on a lot of things that I do, and his things, he told me many things, but he always said, make a plan and plan for the plan to change. So I don't always do great at the planning for it to change thing. I get really stuck on a plan because I love me a plan. Yeah. But that's always been valuable. Sort of like, know what you're going to do, plan it out, and just know that it's going to change. And it's going to be different. And whether it's 30 minutes from now or, 30 days from now, like it's going to be different. And this is, what we're going through now is a perfect example of that.
Yes.
And then my last thing, which actually isn't a piece of advice that I got, but it's advice that I like to give, if you'll sort of you've given me the platform, so whatever, is that I want more people to start with questions. They're an amazing way to avoid conflict, to avoid miscommunication, to learn. Is that if you just start with a question, and it can be something as simple as like, hey, so I heard you say this thing. Is that what you meant?
Sure.
Can you clarify that for me? Instead of coming at somebody saying, well, you said X, Y, and Z, and now I'm mad about it, right? Hey, it sounds like you want to do this. You and I do this all the time, right? Here's your idea. Have you thought about this thing, that thing, that thing, yes. Right? And you just get so much further with questions, I feel, when you start with a question, right? Instead of coming at something and making a statement, and then you make somebody else negate it, and then it's just awkward, right? So that's my thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks.
I think that's fantastic advice. I still think that, and you know what? I think about that every day. Specifically, that last advice to start with a question. That really stuck with me. Another segment that really stuck with me was when Gabriela Lina Frank spoke to us about her journey and how, well, you'll hear it. She talked about the concept of the University of Gabriela, or the University of Yourself, and that really stuck with me. So here's Gabriela Lina Frank with more sound advice for all of us.
I remember my father telling me when I started at Rice University and then got my doctorate at University of Michigan, he would say, "You're at the University of Gabriela. Don't forget that." And it made a lot of sense to me that I had to think of these two universities as a supplement to what I was going to teach myself, because they couldn't hand anything to me. And that's kind of audacious when your private teacher is just a giant in your life, and the values of all the other students around you freaking out about their life and learning this piece and doing that competition is all around you. But my father and my mom had set me on a certain kind of mindset early on. So it has stood me in good stead, and then I didn't expect a thriving career, and it happened. I had some lucky breaks. There's these lucky breaks that come up in a flash and then can disappear, and you have to have a lot going on so that one of them you may catch. But you have to make them as well. You can't be passive and wait for that phone to ring. You have to actively create a scenario for you, for your art to thrive. And you can do it with the help of your teachers, people more powerful. So as I've gotten more successful, I started looking at it as leverage. And my composers will really recognize what I'm saying, because I say this to all of them, that the value of success and the value of money that you get paid, and meeting ever more famous performers, moving up that success ladder. If you only value that for that, it's like an opium hit. Is that you're waiting for the next high, the next time you win an award, the next time you get a good review, and you will never be satisfied. But instead, you think of it as adding leverage. And what are you going to do with that leverage? Then you start building things. You realize that there needs to be a school, or there needs to be a group, or there needs to be a humanitarian effort. And instead of becoming a lesser artist, when a lot of people think sometimes you devote your time to anything outside of you, that you're not as good, or you're just a community activist, it's the opposite. Your skill set to be worthy to hang on to that attention. And so to me, it's one and the same thing. And I think I'm more articulate about it now that I have time to. I'm 47 years old, so I'm in the second half of my life. And now that I have had time to retroactively look back and kind of unpack all my experiences. But I had that sentiment in the beginning, even if I didn't understand what was going on.
And that was such incredible advice from your dad, and I think it also has to do with finding your core.
Yeah.
And finding your voice. And as you make it through different stages of your life and your professional growth, right, if you have that core and what you do artistically and outside of your art, if that's coming from that genuine center, right?
Yeah. And you don't have to exactly know what it is yet. You can just go to something simply because it moves you, and you can figure it out later why. That's okay. You don't have to be able to be that articulate or make an argument verbally. And I remember sometimes I was a very silent student, because I knew what I was doing was the right step, but I didn't want to have to justify it to a teacher or a coach, because I knew I would sound not convincing. But I knew it was right, and I have to become convincing. So it's really important, I think, for educators and mentors and teachers to identify what we think is an inclination, and to just encourage that young person to go and define it better. And go explore this, stay with this for a couple years, write some music, play some music. If you feel like there's a connection here, try it. And you may not be successful, but there's something here. There's some fire here, and you need to go and light it. So, and there's still a lot of stuff I can't identify now. But I know now to trust it, that I'm not going to give up on some sentimental inclination I have just yet.
Cool. And so that really stuck with me. And just like also Chris's advice before that, these are things I've been thinking about every day. And these are things that have come up in many of our conversations with these amazing artists. Now, as you know, many of our guests offer a live performance. And we have had several musicians from the Oregon Symphony. One of them was Charles Noble. And I would love to play now his live performance that he played for us, a piece by Tom. You'll see it on the screen. It was really, really beautiful, and I'm thankful to Charles for having played this for us. So here he is, Charles Noble, violist from the Oregon Symphony, performing for us. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Everybody, get your applause emojis out for Charles Noble performing
That's a nice
Henry
little
Vieuxtemps
piece.
Capriccio for solo, viola, Omace Paganini in C minor. That was beautiful.
Thank you, thank you.
Charles, he makes it sound easy. Um, Next, we had Michelle Merrill as our guest. Michelle is currently the music director of the Coastal Symphony of Georgia. And before that, she was the associate conductor of the Detroit Symphony. And she spoke to us about her early career and her road to getting her job with the Detroit Symphony. And so you got your graduate degrees or your master's, and then by the time you ended that, were you going right into the like auditioning, like
I
conducting
was
jobs? Or?
really lucky in that right after I graduated, my husband actually won his job with the Jacksonville Symphony halfway through my second year of my master's degree. So the spring semester, we kind of stayed apart where he was in Florida and I was in Dallas. And I flew out to him. I didn't even go to graduation. And a few months after that, there was an ad on the League of American Orchestras website for an apprentice conductor with the Northeastern Pennsylvania Philharmonic with Larry Lowe, Lawrence Lowe, as the music director. And I wrote my teacher, Paul Phillips, and I said, I think I'd like to apply this. Do you know Larry Lowe? And he said, well, you know, he was the assistant in Dallas for a while. I know him fairly well. And I remembered when he said that, oh my goodness, this is the person I saw when I went to see Petrushka and Symphony Fantastique done by the Symphony, and the assistant had to step in at the last minute to do it. And it was Larry. And that was my only remembrance of him. But Paul Phillips ended up sending him an email saying, you know, I hope you take consideration of Michelle's application materials. I think she'd be a good candidate for the position. Luckily enough, I was invited to come up and audition. I was one of 3 people, won the job, and I got to be with Larry, and we had this instantaneous connection. And I was like, you know, I actually remember seeing you take over that concert.
Wow.
And was just amazed. And he was such a wonderful mentor, and still is, and just a great family friend. We're huge friends, and they feel like family to us now. But he was so great at giving me my first taste of what a music director does, and also giving my first taste that conducting doesn't always have to be so serious. You can have a lot of fun with it. And you can have, Pop's concerts aren't lower level concerts. They're just as important. They're just as fun, and musicians love playing them. Star Wars is great. Harry Potter is great. Anything John Williams is great. And I think that was something that I saw in him, that he would lean into it. He would put on costumes. He would have the most hilarious scripts and really insightful scripts, too. And he really helped hone my script writing and my way. I'll never be as funny as he is. He's hilarious and one of the best at it. But just it almost is like it gave me permission to not take it all so seriously. Haydn wrote jokes in his music. Mozart wrote jokes in his music. Scherzo means joke. And so I think embracing that side of music was so important to learn from him. And like I said, he's still a wonderful mentor today.
And you were there for how long before you?
I was there, oh gosh, so I would have started that in the fall of 2012. And then I saw that Teddy Abrams, who was the assistant conductor in Detroit, was leaving. And this was the spring of 2014. And I was fortunate that Larry. Oh, hi. Thank you, kitty.
Sorry.
That's Pepper. She's
Pepper.
Very fun. You just want to say hi? You see
Hi,
that? You
Pepper.
See it? Yeah, she's going to join us. I
Wow,
guess.
she's beautiful.
Oh, she is feisty, but she likes music too. So that's
Awesome.
Yeah, so I was fortunate that he knew Leonard Slatkin because of his time in Pittsburgh. And so he actually wrote Leonard on my behalf saying, I think you should consider Michelle, my current assistant, for the opening in Detroit. And I got an email the next day from Eric Ronmark, who was at that time the artistic administrator, now the vice president and general manager, that I could come to the audition. I was one of 8. Again, I worked really, really hard, as everyone does for an audition. It was a long audition process where we had to conduct a variety of pieces and then later go to an interview. And we were in an interview with about 12 different people on staff and some musicians and Leonard himself. And I found out actually that day before I had to leave on the plane that I had won the job. And I was just over the moon because Detroit as a city has had such a rebirth. And the symphony, I think, was a huge part of that. And there's such a forefront on technology and how to reach the community and how to reach an audience and a new audience that I really wanted to be there. And so I concurrently did Detroit and Northeastern PA for a year. And then after 3 years with Northeastern PA, was full-time in Detroit. I was full-time in Detroit and Northeastern PA is a regional orchestra, so it didn't require as much time. So luckily Detroit was happy to work with me on that. And then I was in Detroit for 4 years. And again, just a fantastic organization and hall and people and community. And I miss it every day.
One of the great American orchestras. And
yes,
what you're saying about Michelle Merrill, after working as associate conductor of the Detroit Symphony, started working as music director of the Coastal Symphony of Georgia, that's north of Jacksonville. And after Michelle, we had Christopher Brown as a guest. And Christopher Brown is an amazing jazz musician right here in Portland. And he spoke to us about how he approaches playing different instruments and the relationship in his brain between all of those instruments. So let's listen to Christopher Brown talking about this. How do you stay in shape when you're a multi-instrumentalist?
Great question. So I actually don't really practice piano hardly ever. I only really just kind of started dusting off the cobwebs just for this. I use it mostly for writing music, and I practice saxophone once every God knows how long. The only time I ever really play saxophone is when I'm teaching a drum lesson, because it helps for me to be able to go, here's a way of thinking about something, now let's try it. Because if not, then I'm just telling you a bunch of theories, and hopefully you remember half of them when it comes time for you to have to go and actually apply them. So it's nice to be able to have an instrument I can play where the student can get a chance to see in real time how the idea actually works. So to answer your question a lot more specifically, everything I do is based upon foundation. So what I ended up doing years ago, because I started off with piano when I was 5, and I stuck with it for maybe a year or 2 and then got bored and picked up sports. And then saxophone came around in 6th grade and drums halfway through my 6th grade year. And I just sort of kind of kept them all up over the years. But what was funny is I always kind of had a natural physical ability to play drums. And so as a result, I spent more time shedding piano and saxophone back then. Sure. So if you ever saw me skipping class in school, it was never on drums. It was always on saxophone or piano. And so, but I remember there was a point where I got frustrated and I was like, I don't want to play saxophone anymore. It just does not make any sense to me. How are people able to solo it and it work? But piano started to make sense in the reason why piano started to make sense is because I want to go to the Mountain Jazz camp workshop, and my dad was discouraging me from going because he was like, I think I was like 13 or 14 at the time. He was like, well, this other kid went, and he's basically saying this kid has even more ability than you, and he had a rough time because of like the theory part of things. And so I said, I'm gonna show you, right? So I would stay up till like 2 o'clock, like every morning. I think when I was like 14 or 15 years old, trying to figure out how the piano works, understanding theory. So I pulled out some books, and I just would go to work, and I was like obsessed with figuring this thing out, but also trying to prove him wrong, right? And so I eventually did that, and I remember going, I don't know how scales, all these associated scales work, but I do know how to figure out chords. All I knew really was like, you know what's funny? How I learned how to play my major scales is, so I knew that C to C works. That's not wrong. You can't screw that up. Screw that up, like, I don't know what to tell you, right? And so instead of me go, all right, well, just shift everything up a half step and figure it out mathematically that way, I figured it out by sound. Because it just didn't dawn on me at the time. So I was like, no, that doesn't sound right. So far, so good. No. And then I would go back and like and test it against this. No. No. Got it. And so I memorized my scales by thinking of it in terms of like a road, like if you gave me directions to get to your house, I'm like, all right, make a right on Fremont, then go a half a block to 14th Street, and then go 3 more blocks, then make a left, and it's like the red house on the left, something like that, right? So I memorized it that way. But the point is the piano started to make a lot more sense to me as a result of putting a lot of time and effort in that. So I go, oh, well, what if I just change the way I think about the saxophone? I mean, like 2 or 3 months actually to nail this. And so when I play my saxophone, when I hit a C on the saxophone, I imagine myself touching a middle C here. And the reason being is because I can see everything on the piano. Yeah. I can only play one note at a time, and I can't see it really, right? And so since I got accustomed to practicing all these different shapes, I knew that if I make this shape, that if I made the same shape on the saxophone, that I would get that same sort of like melodic hue or color, if you will. And so now, whenever I practice something on piano, I can automatically play it on the saxophone because I saw it on the piano. So when I play, because again, when I play saxophone, I see a piano. So I just have to program myself to know how things go on the piano, and it automatically comes out here. The only thing that would prevent me from being able to play it clean is that's just digital dexterity. But the basic concept of it comes from me hearing it, and most importantly, seeing it. So that's why piano is super important. The same thing that Dizzy Gillespie said to Miles Davis. He was like, how come it is that when you play, or when I play, that I don't sound like you really? And he was saying, it's because you don't play the daggone piano. He was like, in fact, you actually are playing the same stuff I'm playing it. You're just playing it down and up, because he had more physical ability than Miles. He was like, you should learn the piano. So Miles always attributed that breakthrough in his musicianship to becoming more proficient on the piano. And I don't know a single musician who's super proficient at their instrument that can't get around a piano. I don't know, not one.
Yeah, these skills are so complementary. And what you read was Christopher Brown talking about how his brain works with all of the different instruments that he plays. Also, a guest on the show was Nancy Ives. Nancy is the principal cellist of the Oregon Symphony, and she shared 3 quotes that she lives by, and that also really stuck with me. So here's Nancy Ives sharing her quotes.
But so I actually have some quotes that I printed out because I realized that I kind of live by these quotes. So one that's been very important to me was something attributed to Goethe, which is, as soon as you trust yourself, you will know how to live. And for me, that goes along with something Gandhi said, which is happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. And that's also a definition of integrity, that the inner and outer self are in alignment. So if you want to live with integrity and you want to be happy and you want to know how to live, understanding yourself is the key, because you want your inner and outer self to be in alignment. You don't want to be like you don't want to torture yourself like I did, thinking, oh, I'm not doing what I want to do, and then just keep doing it. It's like, well, obviously I am doing what I want to do because I keep doing it. Yeah. So I had that, I wasn't in alignment, or I wasn't, yeah. So
And
those are important.
Were those two, or were those?
Yes,
three?
I have a third quote.
Oh, okay.
This is from Mary Oliver, the poet. The most regretful people on earth are those who felt the call to creative work, who felt their own creative power restive and uprising, and gave to it neither power nor time. And that's the one that applies to my more recent journey, because, you know, being in the symphony and having all these, and teaching chamber music, Lewis and Clark, and being in groups like Fear No Music, and it takes up a ton of time. And the part of me that's like, but I want to compose again. I did a lot when I was younger, and then I stopped. And it's like, if I hadn't cleared the way to make more time for that, I would be on my way to be one of those regretful people.
Yeah. Those three quotes are really great. I mean, and all three of them together also, I feel like they complement each other.
Here, I'm going to put them on the screen so anyone wants to can take a screenshot.
Oh, yes, screenshot of that. Nancy Ives, principal cellist of the Oregon Symphony, sharing quotes that she lives by. We're going to hear back from Nancy again later in this show. When she was a guest of the Hangout, she performed live, and I'm going to play that performance a little bit later. But for now, I want to move on to somebody else's performance. Maria Garcia, an amazing pianist based here in Portland, played a little Bach for us. So let's listen back to that live performance, and I'll let Maria introduce the piece herself, as she did a few weeks ago when she was on our show.
I'm going to play the first two dances of the Bach French Suite. Number 5 is in G major. And I'm going to play the Allemande, and I'm going to play the Courante, and these are in binary form, so A, B. Usually the B is more ornamented. The repeat is more ornamented. And we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Thank you. Maria Garcia performing Bach French Suite in G major for us, 2 movements. Also on our show, we had Juan Felipe Milano, the music director of the Seattle Youth Symphony. Juan Felipe is originally from Colombia, and he played a game on our show that we played with all guests called Two Truths and a Lie. And that was a really fun one, so let's play that back for everybody. And Juan Felipe, let's reveal one of your truths.
One of my truths. Okay. After being mistaken for a celebrity at the street, I preferred to accept photos and preferred me claim I wasn't. I guess you know what celebrity I'm talking about?
I mean, is this a conductor?
Oh, yeah.
Was it Gustavo?
Of course. So it happened so many times in my 6 years living in LA, working at the LA field. So many times that I recall once when I was at the street after the concert, and my family was waiting for me somewhere else, and then this family, the whole family came to me like, I want to have a photo, Gustavo. Like, wait a second. I mean, it would take me so long to explain that I just, okay, take the photo, and I just leave. And I recall that was a really funny situation. And when we were just like driving back home, and I was explaining to my whole family, they couldn't believe I didn't say a word. But
that is so funny. But you know, I mean, you had longer hair, and that I'm sure confused some people, right? Like I'm looking at I just like Googled you, and I'm looking at a bunch of photos, and some of them you have longer hair, and you know.
Yeah, there are some. I mean, it was a time, let's say, like 10 years ago or longer. I was the head of Batuta in Colombia, El Sistema, and he came a couple of times to conduct, and we 10 years ago at least, or 12 years ago, and we were so much alike. Yeah, it was quite funny. Even to reveal another anecdote around the same topic, at one concert, when I finished, I was the Walt Disney Concert Hall in LA, which is the big hall in Los Angeles. I finished one of the pieces, and before I started conducting, we got a couple of young families visiting, and one kid yelled, "Hola, Gustavo," before I started conducting. So I couldn't start. Everyone laughed. It was really funny. And then I just turned around and said, like, yeah, it's not the first time I hear that.
That's very funny. And yes, it's Gustavo Dudamel we're talking about. Somebody asked in the comments. Okay, so C is a true statement, so we're going to remove it from the screen. And it looks like the audience has a pretty good, I mean, what's the other truth?
Yeah. Tell me.
Oh, you want me to tell you?
Yes, of course.
I think the other truth is A. You were a TV host before being a musician.
So the biking is not a truth.
Well, I mean, I just don't know how many miles, you know.
What do the other participants say?
Well, a few are saying A. We have a B. We have most people are saying that the lie is A. But I think the lie is B.
Oh, that the lie is A. Okay, that's what majority say. Like the A is the lie.
Yeah, but I think the lie is B.
You're right.
So A is true.
A is true.
Yes.
And B is a lie.
Okay. So okay, that means if you answer B, that is the lie, and you're correct. But
yes,
you know,
I love biking. I have my bike, and I don't bike every other day. I don't bike every other week. I just bike every other month, if maybe.
Well, it's a good aspirational goal, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, I guess. Well, you said your brother he works for Caracol, but also I think you have the charisma and the personality of a TV host. So what did you host? What was this?
So it was a TV show that we had. I was an actor before being a musician. When I was a little kid, I came into this company, theater company, and I just did a lot of plays with them. And at some point, the regional channel in Medellin called Teleantioquia was started. And we got a TV show Mondays 4:30 p.m. if I'm right. I was 9 years old, and I was the host, and I was like one of them. And I came with my bike and just brought the mail. Okay, mail of the day. And usually had letters written by the viewers. And yeah, and I also started my theater company when I was 10. And at school, we just went to different festivals, and I was the director. Can you believe that? And of course, all actors, all my friends were older than me. But anyway, that's the truth.
Cool. Okay, so if you answer B, you were correct, and that's Juan Felipe Milano, music director of the Seattle Youth Symphony, playing our game Two Truths and a Lie. Now, I had the pleasure of speaking with Jennifer Arnold. She was a guest on our show. Jennifer is an old friend of mine. She was a violist with the Oregon Symphony for many years, and now she is the director of artistic planning and orchestral operations with the Richmond Symphony. And let's listen to a little bit of that conversation. Can we talk a little bit about not the audition that you won, but the auditions you didn't win before that? And your relationship with, and a performing musician's relationship with, let's call it failure, though it's debatable if that's really what it is, but that rejection. Like, how did that play into your process? Were you affected by it? Were you discouraged? Were you at that age that you understand it as just part of the process? I'm curious.
For me, I did understand it was part of the process, but my own, like I said, my own personal experiences was that I looked at it, I reflected every time I failed or lost or whatever, I looked back and I said, what could I have done better? And for me, it was putting in time. I probably did not, like, especially my earlier audition, there was one that I got pretty close to winning at the beginning, like one of my first auditions, but I know that if I had put in more time, I would have probably won that audition. It just, for me, that was my personal experience, that I wasn't always committed to the... I think for me, failure, the way I don't know how I deal with failure. I don't look at it as failure, probably. That's probably what it is. I look at it, I look back and say, what could I have done better? But I also just don't compete with other people. That's just how it is for me.
What do you mean? So you're competing with yourself? Or?
I compete with myself. I ask, what can I do? How I can only control myself. So that's what I think about. What are the things that I can control? Which is, my time. Am I practicing efficiently? Am I practicing the right things? Am I really listening? Am I being honest with my intonation? Things like that. That's all things I can control. So for me, like, that's what I concentrate on. I don't really concentrate on the other people at auditions or like what the panel is going to think or things like that.
And how did you get there? Is this something that you always kind of had naturally, or is this something you learned over time?
I probably, I don't know. I probably learned that over time, or maybe I've accepted that over time. But that's always actually kind of been how I was raised and brought up. So, not to worry about other people and other noise.
Yeah.
Have faith in yourself. You can do this. My parents were very good at helping me understand that, like, my strength is with me. That kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah. So, for me, I never really worry about other people. And that's not just in music. That's more in, I don't feel that, I worry about other people for things that, like humanity and things like that, but I don't really compete with other people for things.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have been able to become your, like you were saying, you compete with yourself. You've been able to become your biggest critic, let's say, but in a way that's healthy and that's kind to yourself.
Can be healthy. And I try to make it healthy all the time. It's not always healthy, though, I will say. Because sometimes it does mess with you can get down on yourself. And so I just not to let myself do that, to be too hard on myself, I've said this before. I might have said this to some MYS students before, but I always like to when I coach students, at least, I always ask, what went well and what didn't go well, in a performance or something, or in a rehearsal or in a run through. And I always start with the things that go well, because it's really hard for us to say the things that go well with our playing. And it's very easy to criticize because that's what we're taught, listening to, what didn't go right, but or what do I need to fix? But often we don't praise ourselves about what does go well with our playing. So Charles would know this, but I've been known to say backstage at the Oregon Symphony, man, I really played well today, or my vibrato was amazing tonight, which to some people might be that's crazy, that's off-putting, but to me, it just goes to show, I chose to do this. I like playing, and I like when I play well, honestly, it's fun, so I don't think there's anything wrong with being my slide was the best slide of my life today, or I used this crazy fingering and I nailed it. So
feels good, and
yeah,
I think it's very important to recognize and celebrate that.
Yeah, I think so too.
That was Jennifer Arnold, former violist with the Oregon Symphony and current Director of Artistic Planning and Orchestral Operations for the Richmond Symphony. One of her guests was the incredible international cello soloist Johannes Moser, and I want to play two clips from Johannes' appearance on our show. One of them is he's talking about practicing, and in the other clip he's talking about his relationship with the Oregon Symphony. So here is Johannes Moser.
Well, Raul, I'm giving away one of the clues here. But I always loved to practice. And just, since you asked, I just have to say. Sure. But we have a second set coming, and I'm not going to say anything.
Well, and we still have two to choose from. So
exactly, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the game is still on. No, the experience with the cello and me was always that. To tell you the truth, whenever I practiced, I didn't have to do my math homework. So there was an added benefit to my practicing. But in all seriousness, I always felt that there is something so physical about the instrument, how I felt it, that I was really missing it if there ever came a time when I didn't practice for 1 or 2 days. I didn't just emotionally miss it, but also physically miss the instrument. And I remember that it gave me great satisfaction from the very beginning, and I didn't quite understand why until I understood that I have a tendency to enjoy problem solving. And I love doing Sudokus, and I love doing riddle kind of situations. And practicing is nothing else. It is problem solving. You have a problem, you have a scale, and you need to get it in tune, or you have a phrase and you need to go through it, or whatever it is. And that sense of problem solving was becoming quite an adventure for me. So when I understood that I really have these riddles in front of me, and I need to tackle them with full force, that was something that motivated me a lot. And performing, I was always very nervous as a kid to perform, but at the same time I loved it. So also a contradiction there. But it's for the practicing part, whenever I hear people say to this day I hate practicing, I'm like, well, there is so much joy in it, and also practicing itself can be a creative process, I find, right? I mean, the way you organize your practice, the way you choose which technique to use to solve a problem, I mean, that's a very creative and exciting process. So I don't see where the boredom could possibly come from.
let's talk about the Oregon Symphony and your relationship with them and your current role as artist in residence. So how did this all get started?
Well, I came to the Oregon Symphony a couple of years ago, and I was scheduled to play the Schumann Cello Concerto, and I landed in Portland, and there was an inch of snow. And naturally for Portland, the whole city shut down. And being a Munich boy, like when there is like 3 feet of snow, maybe people will put on a scarf or something like that, but everything continues as usual. And the best thing was there was a snow plow. There was one snow plow in the city, but it had to plow up. So it drove through the city, and I was like, "This is not how you do this. You have to put it down.
That's not how it works.
That's not how this works, man." So yeah. Anyways, so that was my first experience. So 2 of the 3 performances were canceled, but still that one performance was really amazing, and I was actually blown away by the seriousness, but also the joyful music making that came from the Organ Symphony right through that Schumann. And then I came back, and I remember that we, through the wonderful work of Monica Hayes, who is responsible for the outreach activities and also responsible for the Artist in Residence program, she scheduled a lot of outreach with me that second time I came. And that is one of my absolute passions. And it's also a passion of the Organ Symphony, because not only are they excellent at their music making, but also they really care about their community. And you can really, you can really see that there is an organization that doesn't just want this for PR reasons, but they really care about their community. And that is fantastic. And when they put me in some of these outreach situations, they saw that it worked quite well, and that I feel comfortable with that. And they thought, well, would be a good idea to put Johannes in the role of the artist in residence. And so I've been back 2 consecutive years, and I'm scheduled to come back in October, which hopefully will take place, with a world premiere as sort of the last bit of my residency. The 2 concerti that I played as part of my residency were Shostakovich and Lutosławski, which are probably my favorite pieces from the 20th century. But I thought, we'll also have to take it into the 21st century. And so we're going to do the Robin Holloway cello concerto. And, when you come back to an orchestra over and over again, you form friendships. And so my relationship to the Organ Symphony is very personal. I mean, you mentioned Nancy, but the whole cello section is absolutely wonderful, wonderful players, excellent players, and wonderful human beings. And so I have a very good relationship with them. But also throughout the orchestra, there are so many members that I now get to know better, and it's such a wonderful place. I see a lot of orchestras, and a lot of orchestras really have troubles in the social structure, because you get one group that is really divided, or you get a group that really thinks they don't belong there or something like that. So I mean, it can be very problematic. And at least in my visits with the Organ Symphony, I did not feel that, but I felt like everybody was really going for the best of their ability, combined with a great human warmth and kindness.
Yeah, and Johannes, towards the end of that clip, he mentioned Nancy Ives, the principal cellist of the Organ Symphony. And I would love to bring Nancy back now. We heard from her earlier in this highlight reel, but now let's hear her live performance that she offered for our show. This is a piece written by her. She's also a great composer, and performed by her live on our show. So here's Nancy Ives again.
Oh
that was Oregon Symphony principal cellist Nancy Ives performing her own saraband that she played for a show a couple of weeks ago. I would like to feature now one colleague of mine, MYS conductor Kevin Lafon. Kevin is an amazing violinist and teacher, and he was our guest yesterday, actually, and he played our game Two Truths and a Lie, and I want to share part of that clip because it was really fun to hear. You'll hear him talk about having lunch with royalty and performing for 100,000 people. So how about we reveal the first truth, or one of your truths?
One truth is that I have indeed had lunch with Prince Edward.
Okay, so and actually the trend was that people thought that was your lie. So how did this happen?
In New Zealand, I was acting CEO of Christchurch Symphony Orchestra, and Prince Edward was in the country doing the thing that royals do in Commonwealth countries, and I was invited with a very small select group of people to go to this exquisite estate and have this lunch with Prince Edward, and his entourage brought him in, and we were given a very clear statement of what to do and what not to do in his presence, including do not shake his hand unless he extends his hand first.
Wow, and so that you get to chat with him, and
he was very chatty, and in fact he did reach out and shake all of our hands, and it was a very normal, formal business lunch with us all there. We got pictures and everything. In fact, I was trying to get some pictures together, but we were told not to take pictures. You know, they were very cautious. Obviously, they'd had their orders, but it was very friendly, and they did send us back then a CD or DVD, I guess it was, of photos, and they're deep in a drawer, and I don't even have a player to play it.
Whoa, that's very cool.
It was cool.
So, if you're still, I mean, if you voted A, you have a chance to change your vote now. So we're down to two options because so many people voted A that I think you get a second chance, ladies and gentlemen. So we're down to two options. Statement B, Kevin has performed solo for over 100,000 people. Statement C, he has never made a haircut appointment with himself for a dog groomer. And okay, let's go ahead and reveal the final truth, which will also reveal the lie.
I have indeed performed for an audience solo with orchestra of over 100,000 people.
Whoa. Okay, so how where can you fit that many people, and when and where was this?
I was asked to perform. This is where my world of arts administrator and musician collided, and I'll do the backstory before I tell the 100,000 people. I was in the midst of contract negotiations, and our professional colleagues out there will appreciate this, that this often pits administration, senior administration, against musicians, those who are doing the work and those who are trying to make it happen in the best way and most affordable way possible. And I was on the front line of trying to craft a new contract and therefore a financial arrangement, which was adversely affecting the musicians, sadly, at that time in the orchestra. And I was the point person for the administration, and the timing was horrible in that my first rehearsal with orchestra playing Schindler's List, the theme from Schindler's List, was with the orchestra during this time when the knives were out. The concert was with the conductor Kenneth Young, who's a famous New Zealand composer and conductor, and he was conducting the orchestra in this big annual summer concert that happens like the one the Oregon Symphony does here on the waterfront. And it's in this big, huge park called Hagley Park, which is the second largest open-air park to New York's big, what do they call it? Outdoor park, so Central Park. So it was extraordinary, and the organizers told us if the people on their blankets and piled into the park are all lined, all seated up into those far distant trees, we know you can fit 100,000 people in there. And that night there were people to the trees.
Wow.
I felt like never like that before. I felt as close as I could get to a rock star.
Yeah, seriously.
And I had, the lapel, the Madonna mic, I called it, taped to my cheek. And that's how they amplified me.
Very cool. And I suppose, like rock stars do, you have actually scheduled a haircut with a duck groomer.
Yeah, this was a problem.
So Kevin went on to share that he did accidentally schedule a hair appointment with a duck groomer, but he didn't actually go. He found out in advance that it was a duck groomer and not a hairstylist for humans. I have two more clips to share with you. One of them is Raquel Rocky Rodriguez. She is a soccer player. She's a midfielder for the Portland Thorns. And our last and final clip will be Joe Kai with his live performance that he did for us. So let's listen to Rocky first. She has a series on her social media channels that she calls Seed of the Day. She does it in English and Spanish, Semilla del Día, and each seed is a piece of advice. So she shared some of these seeds with us. So here is Raquel Rocky Rodriguez.
Okay, I have another one that I really like. It's seed number 24. I titled it, So Who Cares If You're Scared? Okay, so I just spoke about how sometimes, like, the emotional feeling of being scared, it's normal. Every human being will feel that. But the problem with that emotion, I feel, relies on whether it dictates whether we do something or not. Like a lot of people don't dare to do things that they would want to because they're scared. And I think that there's a difference in just feeling the emotion and yet you still do it and you're scared, but you do it. And so I think that sometimes we have to believe in ourselves or take a leap of faith in something. I remember I was terrified of leaving my home because I'm very close to my family. I'm a homebody, and this is just one example, but I was terrified to go to Penn State. But I knew that that's what I wanted. That was one of my dreams. Was I scared? I was scared to death. I was in the plane crying on my way to the U.S. And I was reading letters and stuff, which was the biggest mistake. I don't know why I would do that. I don't know why I was like but the point is I was so scared. In my freshman year, I had no clue if I was going to survive my 4 years there. But I did it, and I feel like that's the difference between a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with feeling that, but I think how we react to it is what matters.
Yes.
Right? So great. That was number 4. That was a really good one. And then let's see.
You have to make a book with these.
You know what? I've thought about it actually. Yeah. Well, there's a one that where is it? Oh, this one. See 29. I titled it Adapting to Change. Okay, but this was born from a documentary that I was watching about, like those documentaries about like the ecosystem. It's like sort of Animal Planet, so it's about the ecosystems and the different landscapes. And I was watching one of these, and there was a line that really stuck with me that the narrator said, and it was something like, it was something along the lines that the only constant in these animals' lives is change. And I think that that's true of life. I think that nothing lasts forever. Nothing is constant forever. The only certain thing in life is change. And when we feel comfortable being uncomfortable in a way, it's going to help us not to waste energy in things that we can't control, you know, but rather if we focus our energy in adapting to what we cannot control, you know, we're going to be better able to survive. That sounds pretty wild, like in wildlife, but I do think that life, it's going to throw at you curveballs, and the quicker that you adapt, the better, because if you waste energy wishing that things were different, or if you waste energy like, hey, why did this happen to me, or what, you know, so you might not get an answer. And, you know, so like adapting to change is the only constant that you're going to find in life. And I think there's a lot that we see that in nature all the time, that there's seasons. There's 4 seasons. It depends on the country you're in, but even wildlife and like a lot of nature is like that, and animals just respond to it. They just do what they're supposed to do, and they keep going, you know. So those are my top 5.
Change is the only constant law. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that Rocky Rodriguez, she is a midfielder for the Portland Thorns, and she is a member of the Costa Rica national soccer team. And I have one final clip to share with you, and it's one of our live performances. Joe Kai was a guest on our show towards the beginning, but I wanted to end this highlight reel with his live performance because it brings me a lot of joy, and I thought that it will bring you joy also. So here's Joe Kai performing his own song, Stick on Me.
I just changed my strings, so it's good.
Yes, so I have been with you, but I know not where we go. No, I am no longer scared, but I find that I'm reaching for the glue. So stick on me and go lick your wounds, and we'll grow together. So stick on me and go lick your wounds, and we'll know each other. Still chasing the other you, but it's just some foolish goal. Losing my sleep to you, But if you're stealing my dreams, I'll let you go. So stick on me and go. Lick your wounds and we'll grow together. So stick on me and go. Lick your wounds and we'll grow together. Together, 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 almost stick. Yes, baby, stick on me. Yes, baby, lick your wounds. Grow, 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 grow. Together, 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 almost stick on me. Yes, baby, stick on me. Grow, 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 grow. Together, 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 almost stick on me. Your wounds and we'll grow together.
Yes! Everybody, put your hands together for Joe Kai. Let me see those applause emojis.
I can hear them.
Yeah, that's just too much. Okay, so that was Joe Kai performing Stick on Me, and that's the last clip in today's episode of the MYS Virtual Hangout. If you want to go back and watch any of my full conversations with these amazing artists, you can go to the Metropolitan Youth Symphony YouTube channel. Each episode is about 1 hour long, and we talk, we share, we play music. And I just want to let you know about the next set of guests we have coming up next week. Thomas Kotik is going to be with us on Tuesday, April 21st at 4 p.m. He's an amazing violinist, recording artist, faculty at PSU. Wednesday, April 22nd, Adam Eccleston, flute player, teacher. He is also a baker, and I cannot wait to talk to him about that. Also, Thursday, April 23rd, we have two musical couples. This is a double feature starting at 3 p.m. with Emily Cole and James Shields from the Oregon Symphony, and then at 4 p.m. Trevor Fitzpatrick and Marilyn de Oliveira, also from the Oregon Symphony. Then Friday, April 24th, Xuan Cheng, principal dancer from Oregon Ballet Theater. She's going to be our guest on Friday, and we're going to do a little collaboration. And I want to leave you all as per a viewer's request, with MYS Symphony Orchestra's virtual performance of Brahms' Hungarian Dance No. 5. All Metropolitan Youth Symphony ensembles are currently creating virtual performances, so you'll get to see these from all ensembles, from our youngest group to a symphony orchestra, and they will do several of these. So here is MYS Symphony Orchestra performing virtual performance of Brahms' Hungarian Dance No. 5. Thank you all for watching. See you tomorrow, MYS students. See everybody else on Tuesday next week with Thomas Kotik. Thank you.